You won't believe this. I caught Karen Whitaker, our HOA's self-appointed queen, sneaking onto my ranch like a wannabe spy, snapping photos of my horse barn like she was chasing a scandal. When I called her out, she went full meltdown screaming, trashing my property, then dialing 911, claiming I attacked her. But hold on, it gets crazier. This woman called the cops on me 3 more times with lies so wild they'd make a soap opera blush. My security cameras caught it all, and what I found on that footage, a conspiracy that reaches the top of our town. Picture this, the morning sun's just creeping over the mountains, and there's Karen, prowling around my barn with her phone, acting like she's TMZ hunting for dirt. My ranch sits just outside the HOA's grip, so she had no business being there. But that didn't stop her from strutting around like she owned every acre. From my kitchen window, I watched her shake her head at my barn, muttering like a villain in a bad movie. When she started zooming in on my compost pile, I knew I had to step in. "Excuse me, Karen, but you're on private property," I said, keeping my cool as I walked toward her. She spun around, her blonde bob bouncing like it was auditioning for a shampoo ad, and hit me with a glare that could sour milk. "Nathan Brooks," she snapped, waving her phone like it was a loaded gun. "This filthy operation of yours. Which city of the United States are you watching from? Drop a comment and share with us if you have any confrontation with the HOA. Will narrate your story on our channel. Of yours is a health violation. The smell alone is bringing down property values for the entire Haven Ridge community." I couldn't help but notice how her voice carried that special kind of entitlement that only comes from years of terrorizing neighbors over mailbox colors and grass. "Height, that's interesting," I replied, maintaining my composure, considering my farm has been here since before your precious HOA even existed, and were not even part of your jurisdiction. That's when things went completely sideways. Karen's face turned an alarming shade of red as she screamed, "How dare you speak to me that way? I'm trying to protect this community from your filth." Before I could respond, she grabbed one of my grandmother's ceramic flower pots from the porch and smashed it on the ground. The crash echoed across the yard, and I saw my neighbor, Emily Parker, who serves as the HOA secretary, peek out from behind a fence where she'd apparently been waiting, and Karen suddenly clutched her ankle and collapsed to the ground with all the drama of a soap opera star wailing. "He pushed me. Nathan Brooks assaulted me. Emily, you saw it. Call 911. Emily's eyes went wide as she fumbled for her phone, and I stood there in complete shock, watching this 48-year-old woman roll around in the dirt, fake crying over an injury that never happened. "I never touched you, Karen, and you know it," I said, firmly pulling out my own phone to start recording. She immediately covered her face and moaned louder, "Stop harassing me. Haven't you done enough damage?" Later that afternoon, I ran into Mayor Randall Hall at the town fair, where he pulled me aside. "Near the cotton candy stand, Nathan, I've been hearing wonderful things about your sustainable farming practices," he said warmly, shaking my hand. "Your family's ranch is the heart of Havenage, been here longer than most of us." His words gave me some comfort, but I couldn't shake the feeling that Karen was planning something bigger, the way she'd shown up on my property with Emily conveniently nearby felt orchestrated, like she'd been waiting for an opportunity to create a scene. That evening, I made the decision to install security cameras around my property. As I mounted the first camera near the barn, I found myself thinking about my grandfather, and how he'd fought to keep this land in our family. This is about more than just some crazy HOA president, I muttered to myself, tightening the last screw. She wants something, and I'm going to find out what. My suspicions were confirmed the next morning when I discovered something that made my blood run cold. There, planted right in the middle of my front yard, was an official HOA violation sign claiming I was in breach of neighborhood regulations. The security camera I had installed the night before had captured everything at 3 o'clock in the morning. Karen had snuck onto my property and hammered that sign into my lawn, and the audio picked up her snarling to herself, "This will bury him, that land will be mine by summer's end." When I showed the footage to my best friend Ryan Foster, who works at my farm supply store, he couldn't contain his laughter. "Dude," she literally said, "this will bury him like some kind of cartoon villain." He flopped dramatically onto the ground, mimicking Karen's fake fall from the day before. "Oh, Nathan pushed me. Someone call the academy, because this performance deserves an Oscar." Despite the seriousness of the situation, I couldn't help but smirk at his impression, but my amusement was short-lived when my phone buzzed with a text from Emily. "Nathan, I'm disappointed in you. Karen showed me photos of the health hazards on your property. You're poisoning our community with your negligence. How could you be so selfish?" Reading her message, I felt my jaw tighten as years of friendship seemed to crumble with each word. Emily and I had gone to high school together, and now she was buying into Karen's lies without even asking for my side of the story. At dawn, sirens blared, and Karen's fake sob echoed as she waved a bruise to the cops, smirking like she'd won the police cruiser's red and blue lights painted shadows across my barn as Sheriff Diane Harper stepped out, her expression unreadable in the early morning light. Karen was already there, sporting fake bandages around her ankle and putting on a performance that would make a telenovela star. "Jealous officer, thank God you're here," she wailed, dabbing at her dry eyes with a tissue. "This man violently shoved me yesterday when I was simply trying to document the health hazards his farm poses to our community. Look at my injuries." She gestured dramatically at her perfectly fine ankle, wrapped in what looked like an entire roll of pharmacy gauze. I noticed Ryan had arrived and was standing near the fence, close enough to hear everything. That's when Karen made her first major mistake in her theatrical state. She muttered just loud enough for Ryan to catch, "I've already bribed the right people to get his land by next month." Sheriff Harper, a no-nonsense woman in her mid-40s, with sharp eyes that seemed to miss nothing, looked between Karen and me with barely concealed skepticism. "Mr. Brooks, Mrs. Whitaker here has filed an assault complaint against you. She claims you pushed her yesterday, causing injury to her ankle." I took a deep breath and pulled out my phone. "Sheriff, I have security footage from yesterday morning. You can see Mrs. Whitaker trespassing on my property, destroying my grandmother's flower pot, and then faking a fall. I never laid a hand on her." The video was blurry. I hadn't adjusted the camera settings properly yet, but you could still make out Karen smashing the pot and dropping to the ground while I stood several feet away. Sheriff Harper watched the footage twice, her eyebrows rising slightly, but Karen immediately began shrieking about how the video was doctored and demanding I be arrested immediately. The morning dew was still glistening on the grass as more neighbors began gathering at the property line, drawn by the commotion and flashing lights. I recognized several faces from the farmers market, people who'd bought produce for my family for years now, watching this circus unfold with expressions Ranging from confusion to concern, Karen seemed to feed off the audience, elevating her performance with each new arrival. "Look at what he's done to me," she cried out, adjusting her bandages for maximum visibility. "I can barely walk. The pain is excruciating." Yet moments earlier, I'd noticed her practically sprinting from her car to position herself strategically before the sheriff arrived. The disconnect between her claimed injuries and her actual mobility would have been laughable if the situation weren't so serious. Things escalated quickly when Mrs. Henderson, one of the longtime Havenrick residents, approached our group and gently suggested, "Karen dear, perhaps this is all a misunderstanding. Nathan's family has been part of this community for 3 generations." Karen whirled on her with stunning ferocity. "Mind your own business, you old bat. I'm the HOA president, and I decide what's best for this neighborhood." The venom in her voice made everyone step back, including Emily, who had been hovering nearby, taking photos. Sheriff Harper held up a hand to silence everyone. "That's enough, Mr. Brooks. While I can see there are questions about this situation, I need you to stay away from Mrs. Whitaker for now. No contact whatsoever while I investigate these claims." She gave me a long look that seemed almost sympathetic before adding quietly, "And maybe upgrade those cameras of yours. The footage quality could be better." After the sheriff left, I spent the rest of the day installing high-definition cameras with night vision and clear audio recording capabilities around my entire property. Each camera was positioned to eliminate blind spots, and I made sure the storage system could keep at least 30 days of continuous footage. My contractor friend, who owed me a favor from when I helped him during his divorce, gave me a deal on the installation and whispered, "I've heard stories about that Whitaker woman. She tried to find my ex-wife $500 for having a doormat that was half an inch too wide. Keep these cameras rolling 24/7, brother." As I worked, I couldn't help but notice Emily had already posted about the incident on the neighborhood's social media page, shocked and disappointed to learn about the assault on our HOA president. Some people think they're above the rules that keep our community safe and clean. Nathan Brooks' farm has been a source of complaints for months, and now he's turned violent. We need to stand together against this kind of behavior. The comments were already piling up, with neighbors I'd known for years suddenly questioning my character. My phone rang, and it was, "Ryan, bro, you're not going to believe this, but I recorded Karen's little mutter about bribing people. Want me to send it to you?" Finally, some good news in this nightmare. That evening, I met with Walter Grayson, my 70-year-old neighbor, who'd lived in Haven Ridge since before the HOA existed. We sat on his porch sharing a beer as the sun set behind the mountains. "That woman is pure poison," Walter grumbled, his weathered face creasing with disgust. "Last year, she fined me $200 because my American flag was supposedly one in outside the approved placement zone. My ex-wife called me just to laugh about it, said it was karma for all my years of stubbornness." He took a long sip of his beer before continuing, "But here's what you need to know. Nathan, I seen her meeting with some fellow from City Hall, had a badge and everything. They were looking at maps of this area, including your property mark. My words, she's planning something bigger than just harassment." Ryan showed up later with his laptop, eager to help. "Dig into Karen's background. Check out her LinkedIn, dude," he said, angling the screen toward me. "She was fired from her last job at Pinnacle Financial Services for abuse of authority and creating a hostile work environment sound familiar? As we researched, Ryan couldn't resist adding his commentary. Oh, look at those bandages in her new profile pic. Is she going for the wounded victim aesthetic? Now very dollar store chic, despite everything. I found myself smirking at his jokes. It was better than letting the anger consume me. But when I checked my store's online orders, my heart sank. Cancellations were pouring in from longtime customers, all citing concerns about doing business with someone who assaults women. The next morning brought fresh hell in the form of Karen's latest online post, complete with poorly photoshopped images of wilted vegetables and sickly-looking animals. Urgent. Nathan Brooks' toxic farming practices are poisoning our food supply. His chemical-laden crops are seeping into Haven's water system. I've called the authorities because he threatened me. When I tried to investigate, the post had already been shared dozens of times, and sure enough, within an hour, the familiar sound of sirens filled my yard again. This time Karen was claiming I had shown up at her house and threatened her through her window. Of course, I had been at the farmer's market all morning with about 50 witnesses, but that didn't seem to matter in Karen's fantasy world, where facts were optional and drama was mandatory. The market that morning had been particularly busy with the autumn harvest, bringing out crowds of customers looking for fresh produce. I'd been manning my stall since 5 in the morning, selling pumpkins, squash, and the last of the season's tomatoes. At least a dozen people could verify I'd never left my booth, including the market coordinator, who'd stopped by 3 times to compliment me on my display. But as I watched the police cars pull up to my property yet again, I realized Karen didn't care about alibis or evidence. This was psychological warfare designed to wear me down through sheer exhaustion and repetition. Each false accusation meant hours of my time wasted, legal fees piling up, and my reputation taking another hit with anyone who only heard her side of the story. The damage to my business was becoming impossible to ignore. 3 restaurant contracts I'd been negotiating for months suddenly fell through with vague excuses about concerns over reliability. My weekly deliveries to the local food co-op were put on hold, pending investigation of quality concerns. Even the elementary school, which had been buying my organic vegetables for their lunch program for 5 years, called to say they were exploring other options. Each cancellation felt like another nail in the coffin of everything my family had built. I found myself staring at spreadsheets late into the night, calculating how long I could keep the farm running. If the income continued to dry up, the numbers weren't encouraging. The HOA meeting that evening was a masterclass in manipulation. Karen stood at the podium in the community center, her ankle now sporting an even more elaborate bandage set up that looked like she'd raided a medical supply store. Fellow residents, I come before you today not as your president but as a victim, she began, her voice trembling with fake emotion. Nathan Brooks has not only assaulted me but continues to threaten our entire community with his dangerous agricultural practices. I've obtained evidence that his farm is using illegal pesticides that are contaminating our groundwater. The crowd murmured with concern, and I watched Emily stand up to address the room. She cast a guilty glance in my direction before speaking. As HOA secretary, I can confirm that we've received numerous complaints about odors and concerns about contamination from the Brooks property. The way she avoided my eyes told me everything I needed to know about where her loyalties now lay. The meeting devolved into chaos. when Karen suddenly clutched her chest and collapsed into a chair, fanning herself dramatically. "The stress of this situation is affecting my health," she gasped loud. "Enough for everyone to hear, but I'll continue fighting for this community, even if it kills me." Several residents rushed to her aid while she continued her performance, but my new high-definition camera in my jacket pocket caught something the others missed. As she was being fanned by concerned neighbors, she whispered to my James Morrison, one of the newer residents who'd recently joined the HOA board, "Stick with me and you'll profit. When we develop that land, the country club developers are offering 3 times market value." Morrison nodded slightly, and I knew I'd just uncovered a piece of the puzzle, though watching my neighbors eat up her act made me feel sick to my stomach. Between Karen's dramatic performance and Emily's testimony, the mood in the room had turned decidedly against me. I sat in the back row, feeling the weight of dozens of suspicious glares. When I tried to speak up during the public comment period, Karen immediately clutched her chest again and moaned about feeling threatened by my presence. "He's staring at me with such hatred," she gasped. "Someone please make sure he doesn't follow me to my car." The irony of her claiming to feel threatened while systematically destroying my livelihood wasn't lost on me, but pointing that out would only make me look more aggressive. So I sat in silence, recording everything on my phone, building my case piece by piece, while she built hers on a foundation of lies and theatrics. The vandalism started that night. I woke up to find garbage strewn across my property, toxic farm spray painted on my barn, and several of my fence posts knocked down. The security cameras captured it all. A group of teenagers clearly put up to it, though they were careful to avoid showing their faces. By morning, news of the vandalism had spread, but somehow the narrative became that I had done it myself for attention. Karen held court at the local coffee shop, telling anyone who would listen, "He's obviously unstable. First he attacks me, then he vandalizes his own property to play victim." Classic narcissistic behavior. When someone pointed out that I had no motive to destroy my own farm, she snapped, "Do your job as concerned citizens and stop questioning me." Her mask slipped for just a moment, revealing the vindictive person underneath, and I saw doubt flicker across a few faces in the coffee shop. Ryan proved to be an invaluable ally during this time, not just for his technical help, but for keeping my spirits up. When I showed him the footage of Karen's dramatic fainting spell at the HOA meeting, he immediately dropped to my living room in an exaggerated reenactment. Oh, the stress, the terrible stress of being a lying, conniving witch. He clutched his chest and fanned himself with a pizza menu someone fetched me. My fainting couch and my schemes. I actually laughed for the first time in days, but the humor faded when he played the whispered conversation between Karen and Morrison. "Dude," she literally said, "profit. When we developed that land, this isn't just about HOA power trips anymore. She's trying to force you out for a real estate deal." The pieces were starting to come together, but I still needed more evidence to prove it. Walter proved invaluable in gathering intelligence from the older residents, who'd grown skeptical of Karen's increasingly erratic behavior. That Morrison fellow she was whispering to, he told me over coffee one morning, he's been asking around about property values, specifically about farms that might be available soon. Real subtle. That one Walter's network of longtime residents had also noticed Karen meeting with men in suits who definitely weren't from Haven Ridge. Same fellow I saw before with the City Hall badge. Walter confirmed they were looking at surveying equipment in the parking lot of the community center. Last week, whatever they're planning, it's bigger than just running you out of town for spite. His ex-wife had even called again, this time with useful information she overheard Karen at the salon, bragging about how she was going to clean up this backward town and make a fortune doing it. Karen's thugs were caught on a street cam poisoning my pond, and now she's got her HOA cronies ready to boot me out for good. The security footage from 3 o'clock in the morning nearly made me drop my coffee mug. There on my screen was Karen Whitaker, dressed in what looked like an official inspector's uniform, complete with a clipboard and hard hat, skulking around my property like some kind of demented secret agent. But here's where it gets truly insane. She was carrying containers of industrial chemicals and dumping them directly into my irrigation pond. The night vision camera caught every detail as she muttered to herself, "The deal's due by month's end, no choice. Morrison better have those investors ready." She'd even gone so far as to create a fake ID badge, and when I zoomed in on the footage, my blood ran cold. The badge bore the name and official seal of Mayor Randall Hall, the same man who'd praised my farm just days ago. This wasn't just harassment anymore, this was criminal impersonation and environmental sabotage rolled into one twisted scheme. The uniform she wore was disturbingly authentic, right down to the reflective vest and steel tube boots. She'd clearly done her homework studying real health inspectors to perfect her disguise. What struck me most was the confidence in her movements. This wasn't her first time sneaking around someone's property in the dead of night. She moved with purpose, knowing exactly where my security lights didn't reach, suggesting she'd been casing my farm for weeks. The chemicals she poured weren't random either. I recognized the industrial-grade containers from my time working at a waste management facility during college. These were serious pollutants, the kind that could contaminate groundwater for years and cost hundreds of thousands of dollars to clean up. The calculated nature of her sabotage made my skin crawl. My hands shook with rage as I watched her scream at someone off camera, presumably one of her hired goons who'd accompanied her. "Don't screw this up. Pour it all in, every last drop." Her desperation was palpable, even through the grainy footage. The way she kept checking over her shoulder and jumping at every sound told me she knew exactly how illegal her actions were. After contaminating my water supply, she actually took photos of the pond, presumably to use as evidence of my supposed toxic farming practices. The level of premeditation was staggering. She planned this whole thing out, from the fake uniform to the chemicals to the forged ID. Ryan, who'd been helping me review footage every morning, whistled low when he saw it. "Dude, she went full Mission Impossible. Except instead of Tom Cruise, we got suburban psycho." Karen, the forged mayor's ID, was perhaps the most damning piece of evidence. I enhanced the image as much as possible and could clearly see Mayor Holt's official photo and signature reproduced on the badge. Either she had inside help getting access to official templates and seals, or she'd committed federal crimes by forging government identification. The implications were staggering. If she was bold enough to impersonate a city official, what else was she capable of? I made multiple backup copies of the footage, storing them on different drives and uploading encrypted versions to cloud storage. This wasn't evidence I could afford to lose, especially given Karen's apparent connections to city officials who might be able to make things disappear. I knew I had to play this smart. Simply posting the video online wouldn't be enough. Karen had already poisoned the community against me so thoroughly that some would probably claim I'd staged the whole thing instead. I decided to release the fainting video from the HOA meeting. First, the one where she'd whispered to Morrison was immediate and varied, while Karen's loyal HOA followers dismissed it as taken out of context. Others, I could see she'd viewed it multiple times that evening. A process server showed up at my door with a thick envelope. Karen's lawyer was threatening a $50,000 lawsuit for slander unless B destroyed. The lawyer's letter was a masterpiece of legal intimidation, citing dozens of statutes and precedents designed to make me feel hopeless. But as I read through it carefully, I noticed something interesting. It was dated 3 days before I had posted the fainting video. This meant Karen had been planning this legal attack, regardless of my actions. Further proof that her endgame had always been stealing my land. Estate, this is what we call a slap suit, he explained. Strategic lawsuit against public participation. It's designed to silence you through financial pressure rather than legal merit. The fact that she's demanding your deed as an alternative to monetary damages is very telling. Don't sign anything and let's start building our counter. Sheriff Harper surprised me by stopping by the next day, not in an official capacity, but as someone who'd grown increasingly suspicious of own history with HOAs, she said, gazing out at my horses. 15 years ago, when I first moved here, I bought a place just inside the Riverside HOA boundaries. They fined me $300 for keeping my horse in my own backyard, said it was an unauthorized livestock situation. I fought it for months before finally just moving out here to the county. She paused, then added, what I'm saying is, I understand how these power-hungry HOA types operate, and something about Mrs. Whitaker's story has smelled fishy from day one. Those cameras you upgraded, keep them rolling, document everything. The breakthrough came when I dove into public records and found something that Karen had tried desperately to hide. She'd been terminated from Pinnacle. Financial misconduct and creating a hostile work environment. The documents detailed how she'd used her position to terrorize subordinates and had been caught trying to manipulate property assessments for personal gain. When I showed Walter, he chuckled darkly. No wonder she went after the HOA presidency. It's the perfect position for someone who gets off on controlling others. He then shared his own contribution to our investigation. That City Hall fellow I mentioned, I got a photo of him last week. He handed me his phone, showing a blurry but identifiable image of a man in a suit examining what looked like development plans spread on the hood of a car. Ryan had been showed a clear pattern of harassment designed to force me out. Look at this, he said, pointing at his laptop screen. Every time you don't cave to her demands, she escalates within 48 hours. It's like she's following a playbook. We were building a solid case, but I knew the disguise video would be the nuclear option for now. I held it back, waiting for the right moment. That moment seemed to be approaching fast when Emily finally reached out with a hesitant text. Nathan, I'm starting to have doubts about some of Karen's claims. That fainting video, something seemed off. Can we talk? It was the first crack in to her HOA loyalists at my gate. But my next tape will make her choke on her own lies. The town meeting was supposed to be about the upcoming Harvest Festival, but Karen had other plans. She burst through the community center doors like a hurricane, her voice already at maximum volume before she even reached the podium. Citizens of Haven Ridge, I need your attention, Nathan. Brooks is destroying our town. His toxic farm is a cancer that must be cut out. The mayor tried to maintain order, but Karen steamrolled right over him. I have evidence of vandalism, threats, and environmental crimes. She waved a stack of papers that I knew were mostly fictional complaints she generated herself. What happened next, I'm not proud of, but everyone has their breaking point, and Karen had just found mine with surgical precision. The community center was packed that evening, with every seat filled, and people standing along the walls. The Harvest Festival Planning Committee had drawn a good crowd, families with kids, elderly couples who'd lived here all their lives, and young professionals who'd recently moved to Haven Ridge. For its small-town charm, they'd come expecting to discuss pumpkin carving contests and apple cider stations, not to witness the complete meltdown of civility that was about to unfold. Karen's entrance had sucked all the warmth from the room, replacing it with the kind of tension that makes your teeth ache. I sat in the back row, trying to remain invisible, but her eyes found me, immediately gleaming with malicious triumph as she prepared to deliver what she clearly thought would be her killing blow when she started showing photos of my vandalized property, the graffiti her own goons had sprayed, and claimed I'd done it myself for sympathy. Something inside me snapped. The weeks of harassment, the destroyed relationships, the threats to my family's legacy, all of it came boiling to the surface. In a volcanic eruption of rage, I stood up from my seat in the back, and the words erupted before I could stop them. You lying manipulative witch, you'll pay for this. You'll pay for everything you've done to my family's land. My voice shook the rafters, and for a moment the entire room went dead silent. Then I saw Emily in the corner with her phone up, live streaming the whole thing, and my heart sank behind her. Several residents were snickering, some shaking their heads at my outburst. I'd just given Karen exactly what she wanted: video evidence of me looking unhinged and threatening. She clutched her chest with perfectly timed theatrical shock. Did everyone hear that he just threatened me in front of all these witnesses? Call the police. And devastating people who'd been sitting near me actually scooted away, as if my anger was contagious. I could hear whispers rippling through the crowd. Did you see his face? He looked ready to kill her. Maybe she was right about him being dangerous. The mayor was banging his gavel, calling for order, but the damage was done. I stood there breathing heavily, watching my reputation crumble in real time as Emily's live stream broadcast my loss of control to the entire internet. Karen, meanwhile, was in her element, playing the terrified victim to perfection. She actually managed to squeeze out a few tears, real ones this time though. Minutes, and this time Karen had upgraded her story to include vandalism of her personal property. He spray-painted horrible things on my mailbox. Photos. She produced pictures of her mailbox covered in crude graffiti, the paint still looking suspiciously fresh. Sheriff Harper arrived shortly after, looking exhausted by the whole circus. Mr. Brooks, she said, pulling me aside, I have to cite you for disorderly conduct based on multiple witness statements about your outburst. It's a $100 fine. Her voice dropped lower. But between you and me, I've been doing some digging of my own. Keep your cool from here on out. Trust me on this. Even as she handed me the citation, I could see in her eyes that she knew something wasn't adding up with Karen's story. The live stream video went viral within hours. Local farmer loses it at town meeting. Read the caption on the neighborhood social media page with my red face shouting, playing on repeat. The comments ranged from sympathetic to brutal, but the damage was done. I looked like the unstable one, while Karen continued to play the victim. My grandfather's voice echoed in my head as I sat on the porch that evening, watching the sunset paint the mountains gold. Nathan, he used to say, this land has weathered storms, droughts, and developers. It'll weather this to the truth, has a way of surfacing, just like cream and fresh milk. His words gave me strength, reminding me why I was fighting. This wasn't just about me versus Karen anymore. It was about preserving a 3-generation legacy against someone who saw it as nothing more than a real estate opportunity. The online pillion was brutal. My business phone rang non-stop with cancellations, and I had to turn off notifications on my personal cell to preserve my sanity. Old high school classmates who hadn't spoken to me in years suddenly felt compelled to comment on the video, mostly to distance themselves from my shocking behavior. The local newspaper picked up the story, running it with the headline, "Farm Owner Threatens HOA President at Public Meeting." They'd managed to get the most unflattering screenshot possible from the live stream, catching me mid-shout-out with my face contorted in rage. My lawyer called to warn me that this would complicate our defense against Karen's lawsuit. You've got to understand, Nathan, judges are human. When they see a video like this, it influences their perception of the case, regardless of who's actually telling the truth. But technology, as it turns out, was about to serve justice in the most ironic way possible. While reviewing my security footage to ensure I had an alibi for the mailbox vandalism accusation, I discovered something that made me actually laugh out loud. My newest camera, positioned to monitor the main road, had captured Karen at 2:45 in the morning spray painting her own mailbox. The high-definition footage was crystal clear. There was no mistaking her distinctive profile or the way she kept checking her phone between spray bursts. She'd even worn the same shoes she'd had on at the town meeting earlier. The kicker, she'd positioned herself directly in front of my camera, apparently not realizing its range extended that far. Ryan nearly fell off his chair when I showed him she played herself literally. This is better than any reality TV show. He immediately launched into another one of his impressions. Oh no, someone vandalized my mailbox. Wait, why do I have spray paint on my hands? Must be Nathan's fault somehow. Despite the dark humor of the situation, I could feel the weight of the battle wearing on me. My farm supply store was hemorrhaging customers. Long time friends were crossing the street to avoid me, and the legal threats kept piling up. But something had shifted after my outburst and the subsequent viral video. While it had damaged my reputation, it had also shown people that I was human, that I could be pushed to the breaking point just like anyone else. Few neighbors who'd remained neutral started reaching out privately, sharing their own concerns about Karen's increasingly erratic behavior. One elderly resident even stopped by to tell me, "That woman fined me for having my garbage cans out 6 minutes past collection time." 6 minutes. She sat there with a stopwatch. The tide wasn't turning yet, but I could feel the undercurrent of doubt beginning to ripple through Haven Ridge. Karen's rallying her final HOA meeting to bury me for good. But I've got a video of her own dirty trick that'll set her lies ablaze. The live stream that broke everything wide open wasn't even mine. Some resident had been recording the sunset from their balcony when they caught Karen in full meltdown mode at my front gate. She was smashing my fence posts with a crowbar, screaming, "This land is mine, it's been promised." To me, $20 million riding on this deal. The video spread like wildfire across social media, racking up 2 million views in just 12 hours. Comments poured in from around the world, and Haven Ridge Karen became a trending topic. But the real bombshell came when Walter's street camera footage surfaced, showing Karen's hired goon dumping chemicals into my pond while she supervised from her car. The environmental crimes were undeniable, captured in perfect clarity thanks to the new streetlight the city had installed just weeks before the emergency HOA meeting. Karen called was meant to be her final push to destroy me, but it became her downfall. Instead, she stood at the podium, her usual perfect appearance cracking at the edges, her hair slightly disheveled, her voice from all the screaming, her hands shaking as she shuffled through her papers. I'm calling for an immediate vote to pursue legal action against Nathan Brooks for slander, harassment, and creating a public nuisance, she announced, trying to project authority. She was rapidly losing. That's when I stood up, my evidence organized and ready before any vote takes place. I think everyone should see what I've discovered. The room fell silent as I connected my laptop to the projector, my hands steady. Despite the magnitude of the moment, I presented the evidence in clear, methodical beats that built upon each other like a symphony of justice. First, the fainting video from the HOA meeting, where she'd whispered about profiting from land development. Anger rippled through the crowd. Second, the disguised video showing her dressed as a fake inspector with Mayor Holt's forged ID dumping chemicals into my pond. Gasps of shock filled the room. Third, Walter's footage of her directing the goon to continue poisoning my water supply. Outrage began to build. Fourth, her termination documents from Pinnacle Financial Services, detailing her abuse of power. Murmurs of recognition from some who'd suffered under her HOA reign. Each piece of evidence landed like a hammer blow, and I could see Karen's face growing paler. With every revelation, I want everyone to understand, I said, pausing for effect. Karen Whitaker has been systematically trying to destroy my family's farm as part of a $20 million development deal. She's poisoned my land, destroyed my property, and turned this community against me through lies and manipulation. The room erupted in chaos, but the biggest shock was yet to come. Emily Parker stood up from her position at the secretary's table, her face flushed with emotion and her hands trembling. As she held up a folder, I need to say something, she announced, her voice cracking. Karen has been sending me threatening emails for months. She said if I didn't support her completely, she'd make sure I lost my job and my kids would be expelled from the community daycare program. I have all the emails right here. She pulled out printed pages, her hands shaking. Nathan, I'm so sorry. I knew something was wrong, but I was terrified. She made me post those things about you. She made me lie. Tears streamed down her face as she continued, I've watched Nathan grow up in this community. His family has helped mine more times than I can count, and I let fear turn me into a coward, but not anymore. The residents' reaction was immediate and visceral. People who'd been sitting on the fence suddenly found their voices. She'll find me for having the wrong shade of beige on my shutters. One shouted she tried to force me to cut down a memorial tree my daughter planted. Another added she measured my grass with a ruler every week. The testimonies poured out like water from a broken dam. Years of petty tyranny and abuse finally finding release through it all. Karen's face contorted from shock to rage to something approaching panic when Sheriff Harper stood up from the back of the room and announced, "I've been conducting my own investigation, and I'm placing Mrs. Whitaker under arrest for criminal impersonation, environmental crimes, and filing false police reports." Karen let out a screech that could have shattered glass. "I'll sue this whole town. You're all jealous of my success. This is a conspiracy." As Diane moved to arrest her, Karen tried to bolt for the door, but slipped on the polished floor. In her haste, the irony wasn't lost on anyone. After all, her fake falls, she finally had a real one. Even as Diane helped her up and cuffed her, Karen couldn't stop herself from hissing one last threat. "Tell Hull he promised me this deal, $20 million. You think this is over?" But her words fell on deaf ears as the room erupted in slow applause that built to a standing ovation. "We were fooled too long," someone shouted, and others took up the chant. Ryan never one to miss an opportunity for humor. Even in serious moments called out someone. "Remix her screech. That's viral gold right there." Despite everything, I found myself smirking as I watched Karen being led away, her reign of terror finally at an end. Karen hissed Mayor Holt's name as she fled Diane's grip, a name I trusted until this moment. The email that changed everything had been sitting in Karen's sent folder like a ticking time bomb, and she'd been arrogant enough to see Emily on it as some kind of power play. Emily brought it to me the morning after Karen's arrest, her hands shaking as she handed over the printed pages. "She sent this 3 weeks ago," Emily explained, her voice barely above a whisper. "I think she CC'd me to remind me who was in charge, to keep me scared." As I read through the detailed plan to seize not just my farm but 5 other family properties around Haven Ridge for a massive condo development, one name kept appearing that made my blood run cold. Mayor Randall Hall, the same man who had shaken my hand at the town fair and called my farm the heart of Haven Ridge, was secretly partnering with Cyprian to destroy it. The email laid out their scheme in damaging detail: bribes to city officials, plans to contaminate properties, to drive down values, even a timeline for forcing families out through manufactured HOA violations. Sheriff Harper wasted no time once she had the email evidence. The next morning she held a press conference on the steps of City Hall that sent shockwaves through Haven Ridge, based on evidence uncovered during our investigation of Karen Whitaker. "We are expanding our probe to include potential corruption charges against several city officials, including Mayor Randall Hall." The crowd gasped, and I noticed several City Hall employees exchanging nervous glances. Diane continued, "Mrs. Whitaker's own communications reveal a conspiracy to illegally seize private property for personal profit, involving bribery, environmental crimes, and abuse of public office." Within hours, a group of residents had filed a massive lawsuit against Karen and the implicated officials. The same people who'd once shunned me were now united in their outrage at being manipulated by someone they'd trusted with community leadership. Karen's attempt at damage control was perhaps the most pathetic thing I'd ever witnessed. She posted a rambling defense on social media from her lawyer's office, claiming she was being framed by a jealous farmer who couldn't handle a strong woman in charge. The post was filled with contradictions, accusations, and increasingly unhinged theories about why everyone had turned against her, but the internet had already made up its mind. Her rant was screenshotted, memed, and mocked across every platform. Someone even created a remix of her various screeching set to techno music that hit 2 million views in a day. The comments were brutal but cathartic. This is what happens when you give a narcissist a tiny bit of power. One read another simply said, Havage deserves better, and now they're getting it. Ryan, of course, couldn't resist adding his own contribution. A dramatic reading of her rant that had me laughing despite everything we'd been through, the town barbecue I hosted the following weekend was meant to be a simple thank you to those who'd supported me, but it turned into something much bigger. Nearly the entire community showed up at my farm, bringing dishes to share and stories to tell as the sun set over the mountains, casting golden light across the fields. My grandfather had worked neighbors approached me one by one to apologize. I should have known better, Mrs. Henderson said, pressing a pie into my hands. Your family has been nothing but good to this community. Even some of Karen's former HOA board members came to make amends. She had us all fooled, one admitted every time someone questioned her. She'd find some violation to find them, for we were scared. Emily had perhaps the most emotional apology, breaking down in tears as she explained how Karen had systematically isolated and threatened anyone who showed independence. She knew exactly which buttons to push, Emily said, but watching you stand up to her, seeing you refuse to give up, even when everyone turned against you, it gave me the courage to finally speak up. Walter gave a toast that evening that brought tears to my eyes. To the Brooks family farm, he raised his beer, 3 generations of honest work that no crooked HOA president could destroy. And to Nathan, who reminded us all that standing up to bullies is always worth it, even when it costs you. The crowd erupted in cheers, and for the first time in months, I felt the weight lifting from my shoulders. Sheriff Harper pulled me aside during the celebration. With an update, Holt's been arrested, she said quietly. Turns out this wasn't his first rodeo. He's connected to similar schemes in 2 other counties. The state attorney general is now involved. She smiled grimly. Your grandfather would be proud of you. Nathan, you didn't just save your farm. You exposed corruption that could have destroyed this entire community. As she walked away, I noticed her chatting with Emily about reforming the HOA with proper oversight and term limits. Just as I thought life might return to normal, a letter arrived from Montana that proved drama has a way of finding me. Mr. Tillman from Bidge Valley wrote a warning to me about an HOA situation that made Karen look reasonable by comparison. They're trying to seize a 200-year-old family ranch for a golf course, he wrote. I heard about what you did in Haven Ridge. We need help. I stood on my porch, letter in hand, watching the sun paint the mountains purple and gold. My grandfather's legacy was secure. The community was healing, and Karen was facing justice. But somewhere in Montana, another family farm was under threat from another power-hungry HOA. Think your HOA's bad, I muttered to myself, already knowing I'd have to help. Wait till you hear about Bidge Valley. The drama never stops. Write Tillman's letter warned of a Montana HOA nastier than Karen. Comment trash HOA and tell me your craziest Karen story. I'm Nathan Brooks, and this is how